If you have your Bibles, I would like you to turn with me to Ephesians chapter 4. Got a couple of handouts that I'll be giving to you in a little bit. And Roger, I'll let you hold these till that time, and I'll get you to give them out for me, if you would. Here's a couple more, I'm sorry. Ephesians chapter 4. Y'all guys beat me there. I'll give you, Roger introduced a little bit ago a little bit of what I do here, but I'm going to share in a few moments a little bit about my testimony as we talk about using your vocation as a tool for ministry. And the complete title is Using Your Vocational Skills as a Tool for Ministry in Your Community. And I'm taking for granted that you're a part of a good local church, and God is using you in that local church to serve Him in many ways, many capacities. But I think sometimes we think, well, I'm not in the ministry, in quotations, or I'm not a preacher, I'm not called to be a missionary, so, I'll just, spend my time in the pew, and I'll give, and I'll, do a few things. But I believe we're missing our calling in many ways. I believe that we're all called to the ministry. If you're saved this morning, and some of you in here today are my students, and you've heard me say this a number of times, that we're all, if you're saved this morning, we're all called to the ministry. And you need to be involved in the ministry and serving. Then God has given all of us talents, gifts, and abilities that we need to be using for His honor and His glory. And as each of us use that and work together, we can accomplish much, much more for the Lord and reach many more people for Christ. Here in Ephesians chapter 4 and verse 1, let me get back over here to it. Ephesians 4 and verse 1, it says, I therefore, the prisoner of the Lord, beseech you that you walk worthy of the vocation wherewith ye are called. Let me get some of this off my podium here. This is a very steep podium and everything's sliding off. It says, I therefore, the prisoner of the Lord, beseech you that you walk worthy of the vocation wherewith you are called. First of all, just a little bit about that verse. The word prisoner implies that we are arrested, we're captured. Someone else has control of our lives. We must have permission before doing anything. We have certain boundaries we must stay within. We're a prisoner, and we're a prisoner of the Lord Jesus Christ. And when we think about that, I think Paul here intentionally used that term because many times he was in prison when he was writing some of these scriptures. And he, not that he was there because of any, even though man had put him there, he knew that God ultimately had control of his life. And he was there because in that particular time, God had him there for a reason. And he used his talents and everything for the Lord, even as a prisoner of Christ. And that's where, if you're saved this morning, we are within those boundaries of the Lord. We're captured. We're a prisoner. And then in that same verse, the word walk is used, and it's used over and over again throughout the book of Ephesians. And the word walk is used here implies a way of life, how you carry yourself, how others see you, your reputation, what you do, who you are, where you go. It's that walk. And also, the word vocation is in this verse. Implies your work, of course, or ministry, service, your ability, the mission, your talent, what you do for a living, or what you do for your Lord as His prisoner. So as you're serving the Lord as His prisoner, walking through life, doing that which your life dictates to you that needs to be done in your livelihood, and carrying out the responsibilities of the home and your job and so forth. We have this vocation, this work that God has put us in. The word calling refers back to the vocation, indicating you have been called or summoned to do this particular work. So when you think about that verse, I hope you can apply this to yourself and what your responsibility is as far as your work or vocation. I therefore, the prisoner of the Lord, beseech you that you walk worthy of the vocation wherewith ye are called. Just to summarize a little bit, we are a prisoner of Christ, called by Him to spend our life serving Him by using the abilities and opportunities we have to reach and help others. Let me say that again. To summarize this verse, we are a prisoner of Christ, called by Him to spend our life serving Him by using the abilities and opportunities we have to reach and help others. And I hope and pray that's our goal. And for you being in here this morning gives me the indication maybe that you have a desire to use your vocation for His honor, His glory, and for the opportunities He's bringing your way. If you'll look with me in verse 11 in chapter 4, it says, "And He gave some apostles, and some prophets, and some evangelists, and some pastor teachers." He's saying God has given the church these men to serve as apostles, prophets, evangelists, pastors, teachers. And they're there for the perfecting of the saints, for the work of the ministry, for the edifying of the body of Christ. We've been given these gifts of these preachers, these called men of God, these servants, and God has called many of them, and thank God, He's continuing to call men like that. And if you haven't already had that calling, you have maybe that might be a calling in your life in the future. But we're all called to His ministry. We're all called to serve Him with those talents. And God doesn't call everyone to be preachers, missionaries, and evangelists. If we all were called, and sometimes at a Bible college like this, and the emphasis sometimes is, hey, if you're in the ministry, everybody please stand if you're in the ministry. I understand what pastor is saying when he does that, but I sort of cringe a little bit because I want to stand because I'm in the ministry. But I know what he means. He means all you that are called to pastor or missionary or evangelist, you stand. But there's many don't stand during that time, but I would say everybody who's saved in that congregation ought to stand because we're all in the ministry. But, I understand what pastor's emphasizing at that point. And he would agree totally that we're all in the ministry. And we all need to be serving Him with the abilities and the opportunities we have. But we are all His prisoner and gifted to serve Him. And I hope if you don't get anything else from this, and I'm going to give you some practical examples how you can use your vocation in a little bit. But I want you to at least get the fact that we're all in the ministry, no matter what God has called you to do, whether it's going to be in a business or as a mechanic, as a carpenter, as a cook, whatever God has gifted you or given you the opportunity to prepare for, you use that for His honor, His glory, and His service. We would condemn a preacher for not being true to his calling and using his gift to speak and teach as he should. But what about us and our gifts and our abilities? Many times we're comfortable just to maybe sit in the pew and let someone else do it. But what is your gift and your calling? What are you doing with what you've been trained and gifted in? And that's where I want to encourage you to do. Just a little bit about my background and how God has helped me do this is I got saved right out of just shortly after I finished college. My wife and I was in Nashville Auto Diesel College in Nashville, the 2-year course similar to what we have here, and I was there as a commuter student, so to speak. Was already married at that time, and the Lord taught us many, many lessons. Didn't get saved till after we moved back to North Carolina, to the Winston-Salem area, near there, and we were expecting our first child, and I remember talking to my wife about the fact that, people who, good dads go to church, so I think we ought to go to church somewhere. And thank God that God sent someone by the very next day to knock on our door from an independent Baptist church just nearby. His neighbor came up and says, "Hey, I just noticed y'all moving in. I'd like to invite you to my church if you're not going anywhere." So I said, "Sure." We'd been thinking about that. I went the very next Sunday, and that's where we were for 33 years before I moved to Bob Jones. Got saved there just about 6 months after that, and began to get involved and serve the Lord. And shortly I realized how God could use me. I was a mechanic at the time, working in a trucking company, and noticed the church was running about 50 people, and I went to Gospel Light to a conference there at Gospel Light, Brother Bobby's church, which is about 30 minutes away from my hometown, and I seen these buses, and I seen all they were doing with their buses, and these boards on the wall were saying how many kids came from certain areas of town, and I thought, wow, and I remember back at the church where I just got saved at, they had a old green 54 model Dodge bus sitting there, and I'd seen it sitting there, but I never see it moved. So I went back and asked the pastor about it, and he says, "Yeah, we used to run it a little bit and pick up a few kids, but it's broke down." I said, "Well, if I could get that fixed, could we start running another bus?" So he said, "Yeah, help yourself." So got to checking a little bit, finally got it running, had a few problems with the engine, but the main thing, it needed a clutch. So had nowhere to work on it, ended up taking it to my dad's house. He's got a farm, and he had a horse barn there. The only place I could find a shelter. Had to rake the out of the area there so I could pull the bus in there so we could have a place to lay down under it. And with the pastor's help, he came by and helped me a little bit. We put a clutch in that bus and started the bus route. And I realized how important it is to use your talent for the Lord. And started doing that. And, we ended up, when I moved from there to Bob Jones, we had about 12 buses and we maintained those the whole time. And that we were there. Church, just paying for the parts, donating all your labor, taking care of pastors' cars, some of the elderly people in the church, all the time being able to help them a little bit. And, I speak as a mechanic because that's where my gift and talents are. But you can apply this to any vocation that you might have. You hear about a lot of times doctors going to the mission field and donating a few weeks of their time to give some medical help to some people in some of these countries that don't have any of that, or dentists, or maybe even nurses. But what about mechanics doing that? What about carpenters? We hear that sometimes, where maybe bricklayers or whatever. Maybe you're into computers and technology. I know a guy, the church we attended in Greenville, South Carolina, when I was at Bob Jones. One of their missionaries, actually, when he was in Greenville, at work, he worked installing solar panels on houses and businesses. Well, he goes to, where's the Zimmerman's? Palau. They're in Palau. Yeah, and there's no electricity there most of the time. So he installs a solar panel on his house where he lives, and they use that as their electricity. So some people in the town realized what he had done, and they asked him to do that for them. Finally, there's they got tribes there. They don't, so the chief or the tribe leader, which didn't want him even there, they had threatened his life many times, asked him to come and do that for him on his house. He ended up leading the chief to the Lord. So he's using this vocation, this talent, this gift God has given him, this knowledge that he has, so that he can further the gospel. And he's ended up being able to get connection in other islands around there with other chiefs if he'll come and teach them how to do these solar panels. And he has got a tremendous ministry. In fact, his brother has actually went over there with him now and helping him do this because of the interest and the effect and the opportunity, the open door that it's given him to reach people for Christ. And many have gotten saved. So, we could go on and on the ministry. While I was there at the church in North Carolina, the missionaries would be coming through. We were right near Piedmont Bible College there in Winston-Salem, so a lot of the Bible students, while they were there training, especially some of the married couples would come and attend our church while they were students there, was able to help them when they had problems. We have a missionary family in France right now that while he was in North Carolina, we helped him with, he had a Volkswagen bus, and we actually rebuilt the engine for him one time. We had to put 2 different clutches in it for him. While he was on deputation, I bet he put 300,000 miles on this Volkswagen bus. It's well, they call it a bus, but it's like a minivan. But after I worked at the trucking company and some automotive shops, I ended up going to U.S. Airways as an aircraft mechanic, and I worked there for 22 years. One advantage of being in the airline and an airline employee, you get flying privileges. We could fly anywhere U.S. Airways went, and we could fly on any other airline as an airline employee at a huge discount. So we used that to fly all over the world to help missionaries. Brother T.J. Tilley, Brother T.J. Tilley is a friend of this church and ministry. He was missionary there in Belgium, and they wanted to, and it was a military work. He couldn't, they needed to buy property, a building to expand their church and ministry, and the government there would not let them buy it because most of their members were military. So they did not recognize them to own property. But they would recognize my church in North Carolina to own it. So my church sent me over there because I could fly free, sent me over there to sign the papers as a representative of my church in North Carolina so they could have this church. So I still own a church. Yeah, still own a church there in Belgium. So if you need a church, I got property over there. But so, it's just examples of how God can use the opportunity. I mean, I could have just kept those flying privileges for myself and used it when just for pleasure and vacation and things like that. And traveled to several missionaries all over the world many times to help them with their vehicles, to help them with some of their work. And once you go over there to help them with their airplane or their car or vehicle. Then you got opportunities to teach in Sunday school, to preach in their services, to help with their outreaches, anything else they might need or have. Also, you get an opportunity to see other parts of the world and be a blessing to a missionary. Just taking every opportunity to have to be used by the Lord. And we started this ministry, Brother Roger, if you would hand out that sheet there. And this is a ministry that we actually started a little bit while I was back in North Carolina. We expanded it quite a bit at Bob Jones when we was there in Greenville, South Carolina, and we've actually continued it here. And some of you guys that's in my class was actually helped out with this, and some of it before you. But this is called a helping arm ministry. The ARM standing for, the acronym ARM stands for Automotive Repair Ministry. Now, whatever talent or gift you have, you could put that in there and use it, for to help. Let me have one of those, brother. This is just a little information. You take this with you, and you'll be glad to use this anyway. The Helping Arm Automotive Repair Ministry. We got a special verse there, Galatians 2:20. For I am crucified with Christ, nevertheless I live, yet not I, but Christ liveth in me. In the life that I now live, in the faith I live for Christ. It's not I, but Christ, is what that verse is indicating. So the Helping Arm Ministry, a ministry that reaches out with a helping arm to help people who may not be financially or physically able to take care of their vehicles, or even those in the ministry that we could be a blessing to. The auto diesel students, along with the students in Automotive Society here at Crown, on November the 17th, this was the last time we did this, we'll be sponsoring a Helping Arm Ministry event. We will be inviting several families associated with our church that need a helping arm to bring their cars by appointment to our college campus. And what we did, we went to 2 bus captains here at Crown, or here at Temple, and asked them to give me a list of all their parents of the children that ride their buses. And we contacted all these parents, explained to them what we were doing, and invited them to come one Saturday here to get their car oil changed, filtered, inspected, and washed all that day, free of charge to them. And as I read on, it says they will be met at the back entrance of the Great Hall, where a waiting area will be set up with refreshments for the entire family. Trained, courteous receptionists will be present to fellowship and encourage these families, including fun games and treats for the kids. While the cars were taken around back to our service area, and we changed their oil, filter, and inspected the car over, make sure lights and tires were in good condition and everything. And if there was any problem, we made a list of these items, gave that to them so they maybe could get it repaired later. At least they'd know the condition of the car. And we'd wash it. We'd drive it back around to the entrance to the Great Hall, and then they would pick the car up and go. This was all free of charge. While they were waiting in the Great Hall, while we did this work, there was young people to share the gospel with them. Gave some literature. We gave them a little booklet from the pastor about salvation. We gave them an opportunity to tour the Crown College here and show them around a little bit, which is a great opportunity for that tour guide to witness to them while they're doing that. And we had a great time that day. We serviced 30-some cars or so that day, and most of the time there was, more than one coming along. It was 2 and 3 in the car, maybe sometimes an entire family would come. And just many of these families had never come to our church at all. Their kids come every week, but they had never come. But it's just a great opportunity to witness and fellowship and help them. And local businesses that I have listed here, they're glad to help with this. Great advertisement for them. And I put up some signs there in the Great Hall where the people were coming in and said, a lot of this is sponsored by local auto parts Advance store. And Food City gave us some refreshments that we could give them. Chick-fil-A gave us coupons for free sandwiches. I mean, you could, on and on you could go. It was no expense to the ministry here at all. Just a real blessing to these people to encourage them and help them. And this could be applied to any ministry or anything you wanted to do. Back in North Carolina, we worked with the bus ministry there. We did this several times where we would have like a closed closet over a period of weeks. We would gather from the church family good used clothing. We didn't take their junk, and a lot of times my wife usually was in charge of this, and she would throw away more than we actually were able to use. But we'd have our gym floor or our gym covered in tables with all these clothing there, and these families would come and right before school starts and be able to purchase some of this with the sort of like monopoly money we gave them on the bus route. So, it was just an opportunity. It didn't cost them anything, didn't cost us anything other than time, just another way to minister to people. And that's what we're trying to do, trying to help all the people we can and reach people for the Lord, love them and encourage them, just sharing the love of Christ with our community. And this, like I said, this could be duplicated with some carpentry or some type of technology, electricians. I mean, you could actually be of assistance to them in many, many ways. And I was telling Brother Mark here he's from Gospel Light, Brother Bobby's church, and if they wanted to do something like this, I'd be glad to come and help them get it started. But, using your gift for the Lord. I also, in thinking about this, I thought about Nehemiah. He was a cupbearer for the king. He was not a preacher. He wasn't a prophet. He wasn't a king. He wasn't, when you think of David, you think of Moses, these great men. Nehemiah was just, he tasted the food for the king so he wouldn't get poisoned. He was the cupbearer. And he got a burden for his people. He got a burden to build this wall. And he got people around him could help do it. But, the burden is the key. He saw the need. He got the burden. And God broke his heart over it. And then when that happened, he began to look for an opportunity, a way that he could meet this need. And God opened the door right up for him. And even used it in really a miraculous way, more than he could ever imagine. I mean, what he's thinking, how am I going to get all this material? What am I going to do? All he's concerned about is getting permission from the king to go. Well, after he gets permission, the king ends up furnishing everything. Gave him, told his people to give him the timber to build the wall and everything he's needed. So God is behind every bit of this, is the point. And when we step out to use our gifts and talents for the Lord, he's right there to bless that and to honor that and to multiply that fruit and see what God can do. Anybody have a question? Anything that maybe I can make clearer? Or maybe you have something. Yes, Roger?
When you say you got sponsors, did you just go to each one of those and ask them specifically?
Yes. I went to, these are like a lot of these auto parts, because we have the school here. We've got to know them a little bit. And I went to Advance, asked for the manager, told him what we were doing and what we'd like to do. And in fact, this Advance store here, he wanted us to do it there in his parking lot. He said, I'd bring a lot of people in here. I said, well, I'd rather do it at our college, and this is the reason. We've got our equipment, we've got our facilities, and part of the reason we want to do this is to be an outreach to these families. And it would be much better for us to do it that way. So he was okay with it. And he gave me all the filters I needed. And I call these families ahead of time, find out what kind of vehicle they have, and tell them what time to be here. So you don't have 50 cars waiting at the same time. We start, say, at 9 o'clock, I'll have 2 cars with an appointment at that time, or 3 cars, depending on how many workers we have. And then the next 30 minutes, I got 3 more coming, and the next 30 more minutes coming. And you space out those appointments so they come, and they're not rushing in all at the same time. And, sometimes you got to allow for maybe an issue or maybe the wrong part or something. Takes a little extra time. But I just went over to Food City. I told them what we were wanting to do. And these businesses, when you tell them you're trying to do something for the community, they like that. And you're going to do something charitable for the community. They like that because they want their name to be out there connected with something that you're doing for the community that's going to help them. Because they're in a business and they're thinking business. Well, give them an opportunity to advertise their business in a good, positive way, and they're willing to do it. Chick-fil-A is always good about this. And just go in and ask for the manager and share with them what you're trying to do.
I was just thinking, they did all this for the Helping Arm thing, but then when you had the big car show in October, every one of these sponsors helped with that too.
They did. And also, when I was backing here, we got a good facility to do this in. When I was in South Carolina, the church there had a maintenance building where they, because of the large grounds and the mowers and different things, they had a maintenance man there all the time to help maintain the church property. They got a Christian school there, so it's a pretty big operation. They actually had a maintenance building. Well, when we done it there in South Carolina, we actually just took everything out of the maintenance building, all the mowers and all the weed eaters and everything totally out of the maintenance building one day on a Saturday, and put it off to the side, and we could get the vehicles inside there. You can do it outside. I've done it outside in the parking lot. Just got to have all your jacks and jack stands and everything there for you, and pray for pretty weather. But yes, it works well, and people love it, and it's a great blessing to a lot of families. We did it in we've done this before, not only for bus route families, but the senior saints in the church. Many of these, they're not sure where to take their car. They're not sure who they can trust, and sometimes they don't like to deal with that. And you can do it for your senior saints in the church. And some of those, if they're not able to bring their car to where you're doing the work, tell them you'll come and get it, and you can have a couple of older, responsible young people that are that would go and pick these vehicles up and shuttle them back and forth to what you're doing, and these elderly wouldn't have to even get out.